12 Angry Men Analysis by Daniel, Mohammed, Matthew, and Andrew and Liam. The overview of topics will be personality and including openness, conscientiousness, extravision, agreeableness, neutralism. Also will be stress, including stressors, hindrance, stressor, rule overload, negative life event, and also challenge stressors, which include responsibility, time pressure. Strains, which is including physical strains, and also the last one will be coping, including emotion-focused behavior methods, also emotion-focused cognitive methods. First of all, we are going to talk about personality. Personality including, like as I said, openness, conscientiousness, neutralism, agreeableness, and extroversion. Personality describes a person's thoughts, behavior, and emotion, and can be categorized using personality traits. The Big Five personality test divided this trait and rank a person's level of openness, consciousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neutralism. The openness is described as the active seeking of and appreciation of experience for their own sake. We are going first talking about the juror number 12, which his name Robert Weber was the juror who intentionally came up with the idea to go around the circle and let all the other members seeking in order to hear everyone's opinion. This shows openness since he was willing to try a new idea to progress the discussion, as well as being open to hear a virgin people's opinion. This openness went on to allow every jury to give his opinion and reasoning behind it, all of which may not have occurred without George Well's openness. And we are going to talk right now about the consciousness. Juror 8, or we are going to first describe what is the consciousness. It describes the degree of organizing, resisting, and control, and motivation in a goal-direct behavior. And some example of the characters who portrayed this personality, which is Juror 8 and Juror 1. Juror 8, played by Henry Fonda, was the only juror who intentionally voted not guilty for the accused, and carefully and listened very carefully and gave his opinion for all the jurors, and he was like opening for all the deliberation, thought about all sides in the question, and was insistently dedicated to fighting for the justice. And juror 1, he took the attentive and organized everyone to sit in the numerical order regarding juror number. This shows that they were organized and very careful about going or doing the job, and conscientiousness is very helpful for achieving the goals.
So next we're going to talk about extroversion. That's defined as the quantity and intensity of energy directed outward into the social world, as well as being talkative and sociable to many people. So one person we noticed was very extroverted was juror number 7. He had no issue talking immediately with people he didn't know in the jury room. He was like floating around in different groups, talking to different people. And the characters that were more sociable and extroverted not only voiced their opinions loudly, but they also, some of them allowed the more introverted people to become heard, and they wouldn't have said anything if it wasn't for the more extroverted characters. Next is agreeableness. That's the level of cooperativeness, care, and willingness to trust. So juror number 9, the very old man, put his trust into juror number 8, Henry Fonda, in the beginning by casting the second vote to continue the conversation of the verdict. People with high levels of agreeableness are typically easily swayed by others' actions. During the first vote, the old man was the last to raise his hand for not guilty when he looked around to see his other peers' opinions, just because he wanted to hear what juror number 8 had to say. Juror number 12, Robert Weber, was easily swayed by a couple jurors' reasoning when he changed his vote from not guilty to guilty twice. He kind of flip-flopped a few times just to go with the crowd. Without a few jurors' sense of agreeableness, the jury would not have concluded. It could have concluded after 2 votes, actually. But this trait lengthened the conversation and helped them to reach the verdict of not guilty, so it was positive. Next is neuroticism. This was most boldly juror number 3. He was loud. He was emotional. When others disputed him, he became angry. He responded frequently with insults and more shouting. He displayed a lot of classic shows of aggression, like pointing his finger and getting in people's faces, as well as trying to physically dominate them. Neuroticism was obvious with his increased instability. So he breaks down and cries and admits that he was wrong. When there was so much evidence, he couldn't dispute it anymore, and his side was losing. He realized he was fighting a losing fight. So next is stress. Stress is a psychological response to demands that possess specific stakes and that exceed a person's capacity or resources. So you can break it down into stressors and strains and coping methods. All 3 subsections of these are present in the film, and they all negatively affect each character's ability greatly. They put constraints on their mental and physical states, and you can see how that affects them throughout the film.
In 12 Angry Men, there were many stressors involved in the film. Stressors are described as the demands that cause people to experience stress. This included intense physical heat, the time period, or the set period you had to complete the trial by, and the overall anxiety the court case brought. There are 2 types of major stressors, which are hindrance stressors and challenge stressors. And one of the hindrance stressors is role overload. And role overload is defined as the number of demanding roles a person holds so high that the person can't simply perform all the roles effectively. For instance, juror number 1 noticed that certain jurors are not appreciating the organizational structure that he has implemented. This was going around after the preliminary vote and expressing why they thought the boy was guilty or not guilty. And juror number 10 wanted to hear juror number 8 talk about why he was not guilty instead of why he was guilty. So juror number 1 was conflicted and very mad, and he had a sense of role overload and wanted juror number 10 to take over the leadership role of the trial. Another hindrance stressor is negative life events. This was imminent and with juror number 3 because he had an estranged son, and the court case was about the boy who killed his father, or he didn't, of course. And since juror number 3 had a direct relationship with his son, and he punched him supposedly, he had bad blood and thought that the youth was just prone to be bad, and he basically thought the boy must have killed his father. A challenge stressor was work responsibility, and it was the duty to perform a task in which failure could result in a penalty. This penalty was hung jury or sentencing a boy to like execution or death. And Juror number 8 was against bias and desired to look at the problem and the evidence from what they were and did not interfere from prior judgments. He questioned juror number 10 on his integrity throughout the trial and based on believing the woman witness from a similar background.
Right. Time pressure is also another challenge stressor. In the films, the jurors are kind of confined to the time limit and the time to get into an overall consensus of just 12-0 vote either way. So they know if they fail to overcome it, it's going to go into a hung jury. And juror number 8, who initially was the only person that said not guilty, he really wanted this to not go to a hung jury because he knew if it did go to a hung jury, it would just bring in a new jury, and the next jury wouldn't likely vote him anything but guilty, just as other 11 men would have done initially. So this builds a lot of stress and anxiety on all the jurors, but especially number 8 and other jurors who wanted to get out of there, like juror number 7. Strains are defined as negative consequences that occur when demands tax or exceeds one capacity or resources. So that pretty much means when it's effects of all these stressors, really. And the two types of are physical and psychological strains. But the real main type of strain that we saw during this movie was the psychological strain. So we really decided to focus on that area.
So starting to get into the psychological strains, they're caused by emotional, mental, and physical exhaustion that results from having to cope with stressful demands, work-related or otherwise. And Jack Warden, who was juror 7, had faced physical strain from the excessively hot room when the fan wasn't working that he tried to fix throughout the film. And it was clear that as the film went on, that the frustration and the tension of the room combined with the heat was really affecting his mental state. And so what we saw was he switched his vote from guilty to not guilty just because of the constant strain that he was going under due to the heat and all the other complications in the room from the debate. And if these factors were not here, it is evident that Jack Warden would have changed his vote and he would have persisted on voting guilty. So getting a little more into coping, coping is defined as the behaviors and thoughts that people use to manage both stressful demands and the emotions associated with those stressful demands. We see different variations of coping throughout the movie, but the main focus areas are emotion-focused behavioral and cognitive methods. Coping is one of the primary reasons that some of the jurors made it through the trial without breaking down. Without the periodic breaks that they got throughout the trial, or people distancing themselves from others, like we saw several times in the film, or participating in outside activities, the stress level in the room would grow even higher, making it hard to proceed with the trial. So emotion-focused behavioral methods. Some methods you could use to do this include engaging in alternative activities, possibly seeking support from others, and even venting your anger. We saw juror number 12 distance himself from the trial multiple times. When juror 8 was speaking, jurors 12 and 3 played tic-tac-toe by doing this. They engaged in an alternate activity. Some men actually needed a break from the talking and went to the bathroom or even got water. So getting into emotion-focused cognitive methods, they include avoiding people, distancing yourself, ignoring people, looking for positive in the negative, and reappraising. We saw Jack Warden, who is juror 7. He's a prime example of emotion-focused cognitive methods because throughout the entire film, we watched as he distanced himself from others, ignored others, and cracked jokes, turning negative events into positive ones. One of the leading examples of Jack Warden distancing himself with others to deal with his stress was in the middle of the discussion. He bolted into the bathroom to seclude himself from the others.
All right. As a summary, pretty much this film really captures the essence of working with a group of strangers, working together to make life changing decisions based on limited information. Um, this really allows like us to go into OB and see these people's personality traits, their thought processes. It allows us to see how and why these like big five traits really affect a group and under these stressful circumstances, and see how they interact with one another, and how the who really has these traits, and identify people that do. Also, the stress aspect of OB really enables us to see why stress, not only why stress has evolved, but also the consequences, and seeing people in live in real time respond using these coping methods. And yeah, this movie was a perfect example of everything pretty much OB. All right. Thank you.